When my husband finally showed up to our daughter's recital after 3 years of absence, he wasn't alone. He brought her, the woman he'd been having an affair with for months. And when my little 7-year-old asked who the woman sitting next to her daddy was, that was the moment I decided he would never again use our children as an audience for his humiliations. So I did something no one expected. I gathered every message, every receipt, every lie he had ever told. And when his lawyer thought he could intimidate me during the divorce, I laid on the table not just the proof of his infidelity, but every record I had saved for years showing how he had never been present in our children's lives. The judge didn't just grant me full custody, he ordered him to pay a child support sum that made up in money for everything he failed to give in presents. Today, my children finally have peace, I have my dignity back, and he learned that neglect has a price. I was sitting in the 4th row of the school auditorium, my phone vibrating in my lap for the 10th time in 5 minutes. They were his texts, claiming the traffic was impossible, that he'd be there any minute. But I already knew it was a lie, just as I had known during the other 12 school performances, the 6 birthdays, the countless doctor's appointments. My daughter, Sophia, was behind the stage curtain, and I could see her peeking through the gap, searching the audience for her father. She was wearing the pink ballerina dress I had sewn by hand because he'd claimed he didn't have the money for a new one, even though he'd just bought a new car. When the teacher announced her name and the curtain opened, I saw my little 7-year-old do that quick scan of the crowd, looking for him. Her smile faltered for a second when she realized her father wasn't there, again, but she took a deep breath and began to dance. And I was there, recording everything on my phone with trembling hands, trying to smile and wave at her, but inside I was shattered because I knew exactly what that child was feeling. Then the auditorium door opened. It was him, finally. After 3 years of missing every school event, he had chosen to show up on this day. I felt such a wave of relief that I mentally forgave him for everything. But as he walked in, as I turned to give him a subtle wave so he could see where we were sitting, I saw he wasn't alone. There was a woman with him, young, beautiful, laughing at something he had just whispered in her ear. They sat together 3 rows behind me. I froze, my heart pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Sophia had just finished her performance and was running down from the stage toward me with a huge grin. She hugged me and whispered in my ear, asking if Daddy had come. I couldn't speak. I just pointed discreetly behind us. And when she looked and saw him sitting with that woman, a woman she had never seen before in her life, my 7-year-old daughter looked back at me with such profound confusion in her eyes that I felt my world crumble. She asked in a small voice, "Mommy, who's that lady with Daddy?" And in that exact moment, with my 7-year-old daughter asking me a question I couldn't answer, with my husband sitting back there pretending to be a present father while parading his mistress at our daughter's school event, something inside me snapped. It wasn't anger, not sadness. It was clarity. A cold, crystal clarity that I had allowed this to go on for far too long. That my children deserved more than scraps of attention seasoned with public humiliation. And as I held Sophia's hand and felt it tremble waiting for my answer, I made a decision that would change everything. Never again, I thought. He would never again use my children as the backdrop for his betrayals and his neglect. And there, in that auditorium filled with proud parents and happy families, I began to plan my escape. Before I go on with this story, I need to pause and thank every single one of you who is here watching. You have no idea how much it means to me to be able to share these experiences. I know that many of you listening right now have been through something similar or know someone who is, and that is exactly why I created this channel, so that no one has to feel alone on this journey, to show that it's possible to escape situations that feel like a dead end. So if you're connecting with this story, if it's touching your heart in some way, please hit the subscribe button down below, ring the bell for notifications of new videos, and leave a like so that YouTube can show this content to more people who need to hear that they are not alone. Every subscription, every like, every comment makes all the difference. It helps me continue bringing these stories to you. And now, let's get back to that auditorium, because what happened after that day completely changed my life and the lives of my children, and I have to tell you everything. Let me go back to the beginning so you can understand how I got to that point. I met Richard when I was 23. He was charming, attentive, and always knew what to say. He worked as a sales manager and seemed to have his whole life planned out. For the first 6 months we dated, he was perfect. He'd pick me up from work, bring me flowers for no reason, and call just to ask how my day had been. When he proposed after a year, I didn't hesitate. I thought I had found my partner for life. We got married in a simple ceremony because he said it was better to save money for our future home. And I agreed because I've always been practical. The first 2 years were good. We lived in a small but cozy rented apartment. I was working as a teacher, and he was climbing the ladder at his company. Then Sophia, my first child, was born, and that's when things started to change, slowly. At first, it was small things. He'd say he was too tired to wake up in the middle of the night when she cried, that I was the mother, so it was natural that I knew how to handle a baby better. I accepted it because I genuinely thought it made sense. After a few months, he started going out more with his work friends. Happy hours that stretched late into the night, weekends with colleagues to play soccer. And when I asked him to stay home to help me with Sophia, he'd say I was being controlling, that he worked all week and deserved a break. 2 years later, Michael came along, and his absence became even more glaring. He didn't go to a single prenatal appointment, claiming he couldn't miss work. When Michael was born, he showed up at the hospital 4 hours after the delivery because he was closing an important deal. He held the baby for 5 minutes, took a picture to post on social media with an emotional caption about fatherhood, and left. I was alone in the hospital room with episiotomy stitches, flooded with hormones, holding my newborn baby and crying because I realized I would be raising these children almost entirely on my own. But I still had hope. I thought that when they got a little older, he would become more interested, that he would want to play with them, teach them things, be present. But that's not what happened. As the years went by, he grew more and more distant. He'd come home late, always having some meeting or work commitment. On weekends, he would sleep in late, and when he woke up, would just stare at his phone. The kids would ask him to play, and he'd say he was tired, that he needed to rest. I remember one time when Sophia was 4 and asked her father to teach her how to ride a bike. He promised he would take her to the park on Saturday. She spent the whole week excited, talking about it constantly. When Saturday came, he said he'd forgotten he had made plans for a barbecue at a friend's house. Sophia cried. I cried after she fell asleep. And he went to the barbecue as if nothing had happened. His mother, Marcia, always made excuses for him, saying that's just how men are, that the important thing is that he works and brings money home, that I was too demanding, too dramatic. His sister, Patricia, was even worse, always making comments about how lucky I was to have such a hard-working husband, that her own husband was unemployed, so I should be grateful. They made me feel guilty for wanting my children's father to be present in their lives. I started to question myself. Was I asking for too much? Was I really too demanding? But then things would happen that reminded me that no, it wasn't demanding. It was the bare minimum. Like when Michael broke his arm falling off the slide, and I called Richard, frantic, asking him to meet me at the hospital. He said he was in an important presentation and couldn't leave. I spent 4 hours alone in the emergency room with a 5-year-old in agonizing pain while my husband was closing a sale. Or when Sophia had a high fever in the middle of the night, I was home alone. I grabbed her, grabbed a sleeping Michael, put them both in the car, trembling with fear, and drove to the hospital, praying my daughter wouldn't die on the way. I called Richard about 15 times. He didn't answer once. He only replied to my text 3 hours later, saying his phone had been on silent. I never believed him. I started noticing other things too. The smell of a different perfume on his shirt, the messages he'd hide when I walked by, the business trips that became more frequent. But I was so tired, so exhausted from raising 2 children almost entirely by myself, working full-time, and taking care of the house, that I didn't have the energy to investigate. I just wanted to survive each day. The children started asking why Daddy was never home, why he didn't come to their school parties, why he never watched movies with us. I would make up excuses, telling them that Daddy worked very hard to give them a good life, but inside, I died a little every time I had to justify his absence. There was Michael's 6th birthday. I organized a simple party at home with a few of his school friends. Richard promised he would leave work early to be there. I reminded him 2 weeks in advance. Michael was so happy, counting down the days. On the day of the party, I got everything ready, made homemade chocolate fudge, decorated the house with balloons. Michael kept waiting by the window for his father to arrive. His friends came, we sang happy birthday, we cut the cake, and Richard never showed up. No text, no call, he just didn't come. When the party was over and everyone had gone home, I found Michael crying in his room. He asked me if Daddy didn't love him, if he'd done something wrong. I held my 6-year-old son and didn't know what to say. Because how do you explain to a child that their own father simply doesn't care enough to show up to his own son's birthday party? It was in that moment that I realized it wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't about the marriage I had dreamed of that didn't exist. It was about 2 children who were growing up thinking they weren't important, that they weren't worthy of their own father's love and attention. And I couldn't allow that. But I still didn't know how I was going to change the situation. I had no family nearby. My parents had passed away when I was young. I was financially dependent on him because my teacher's salary barely covered the basic bills. And I was afraid. Afraid of raising my children alone. Afraid of not being able to manage. But mostly, I was afraid that by trying to change things, I would only make their situation worse. The exact moment everything changed was 3 weeks after that humiliating recital. I was cleaning his car because he'd asked me to. He said he had an important meeting and the car needed to be presentable. When I opened the glove compartment to throw out some old papers, I found a hotel receipt. It was from a weekend he had claimed to be on a business trip in Chicago, except the receipt was from a hotel right here in the city. An expensive one, the kind with a luxury suite and breakfast included. My stomach churned. I kept looking and found more. Receipts from romantic restaurants on dates he said he was working late, jewelry store receipts for gifts I never received. And then I found the worst of it, a small blue velvet box hidden under the seat. I opened it and saw a delicate silver necklace with a heart pendant. Inside the glove compartment was the jewelry store's gift card with the purchase date, 3 days before my birthday last year. I remembered that day. I had made a special dinner, hoping he would at least remember. He came home at 11 p.m., saying he had completely forgotten and that he would make it up to me on the weekend. He never did. And now I was holding a necklace he had either bought for me and never given, or worse, had bought for someone else. I sat in the passenger seat of his car holding that necklace, and I didn't cry. I expected to feel pain, anger, despair, but what I felt was a coldness I had never experienced before. It was as if all the years of disappointment, all the broken promises, all the humiliations had frozen something inside me. And for the first time, I didn't want to save the marriage. I didn't want to give him another chance. I didn't want to believe he could change. I wanted justice. I wanted him to pay for every tear I shed alone, for every night I stayed up with a sick child while he was God knows where, for every time I had to look into my children's eyes and make up an excuse for their father's absence. That afternoon, sitting in his car, I made a decision. I was going to leave this marriage, but I wasn't going to leave empty-handed. I wasn't going to be the pitiful, abandoned wife. I was going to come out on top, with full custody of my children, with the financial security they deserved, and with my dignity intact. But I knew I couldn't be impulsive. Richard had money, a family who would defend him, and lawyers his company would pay for. If I just asked for a divorce, he would do everything to hurt me, to get joint custody, even without wanting the children, just to avoid paying full child support. He was exactly that kind of man. So I had to be strategic. I needed proof. I needed a plan. That night, when he came home, I acted completely normal. I served dinner, asked about his day. He didn't even notice something had changed. But I knew everything had. In the following days, I started observing everything with new eyes. Every lie he told, I discreetly noted on my phone with a date and time. Every time he failed to show up for the kids, I documented it. I started taking pictures of the calendar in our kitchen where I marked the school events he missed. I saved all the text messages where I asked for help and he ignored me or made up excuses. I created a secret folder in my email and started sending everything there. Screenshots of conversations, photos of receipts, everything. I also started preparing financially. I had a small savings account my grandmother had left me years ago that I'd never touched. I took that money and opened an account at a different bank, in my name only. I began saving a little bit every month, small amounts he wouldn't notice were missing, $20 here, $50 there. I also started educating myself. I spent hours reading about family law, child custody, alimony, and asset division. I joined Facebook groups for divorced women and read hundreds of stories, learning from other women's mistakes and successes. I discovered that his behavior, the emotional absence, the neglect of our children, all of it would count in a custody decision. I learned that I needed concrete evidence, witnesses, records. So I started building my case as if I were my own lawyer. I asked the school principal for a record of attendance at parent-teacher conferences. Guess who never showed up for a single one? I asked my children's pediatrician for a document showing who brought them to their appointments. Out of 17 appointments in the last year, he had attended 0. I gathered all the invitations to birthdays, school parties, performances, everything he had missed. And most importantly, I started keeping a journal. Every night before bed, I wrote down what had happened, how I felt, what the children said about their father's absence. I wrote everything down in detail, dates, times, exact words. That journal became both my refuge and my weapon. I also had to be smart about the infidelity. I knew he was cheating, but I needed proof. So one night, while he was in the shower, I took his phone. It was password protected, but I knew the code. He used his own birthday because he was just that narcissistic. I went straight to his deleted messages. I'd learned a trick online to recover them, and there it was. Conversations with a woman named Jessica. Plans for dates, explicit messages, declarations of love. He had been with her for almost a year, an entire year, while I was raising his children, while I believed he was working. I took screenshots of everything. There were over 200 messages. I sent them all to my secret email and erased any trace that I had been on his phone. But I still needed more. I needed to know who this Jessica was, where she worked, if she knew he was married with children. So I created a fake social media profile and started digging. I found out she worked at the same company as him, on the marketing team. She was 26, much younger than me. Her Instagram photos showed her constantly posting about trips, expensive restaurants, and gifts she received. And in several photos, I could see details I recognized. The watch I had given him for our wedding anniversary, a shirt I had bought him. Even the picture frame from his home office with a photo of our children appeared in the background of one of her pictures. He was taking her to our house when the kids and I weren't there. This gave me an idea. I installed one of those tracking apps on his phone, the kind jealous spouses use, but that I had never considered before. I set it to invisible mode, and for 3 weeks, I monitored his every move. I found out he went to her apartment twice a week, always on the days he claimed to have late meetings. I found out they met at hotels every second Saturday of the month, the exact Saturdays he said he had his soccer game with his friends. I even found out about the day of Sophia's recital. He had taken her along because they were coming from a lunch date and the school was on the way. He had literally used his daughter's recital as an excuse for a date with his mistress. When I discovered that, I felt a rage so intense I had to lock myself in the bathroom to keep from exploding. But I took a deep breath and remembered my plan. No emotional confrontations, no dramatic scenes. That was exactly what he and his family would expect. I had to be cold, calculating, ruthless. So I kept gathering evidence. I kept acting like the devoted, clueless wife. But inside, I was building a case so solid that no lawyer of his could tear it down. And when I had everything ready, when I held all the cards, then I would show my hand, and he would never see it coming. It took me 4 months to gather the evidence, and another 2 to prepare for the right moment. And the right moment arrived when I discovered that Richard was planning to apply for a promotion that included relocating to another city. He hadn't even told me. I found out because I saw an email on his computer. I knew that if he got that promotion, he would use it as an excuse to be even more absent, or worse, to fight for custody by claiming better financial stability. So I decided it was time to act. But first, I needed a good lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I needed someone who specialized in family law and was relentless. I researched for weeks, read reviews, watched videos, until I found Dr. Evans, a lawyer known for winning custody cases even when all seemed lost. I scheduled a consultation and brought everything I had gathered. When I placed that pile of documents, screenshots, emails, photos, and school and medical records on her desk, she was silent for a good 5 minutes, just flipping through it all. Then she looked up at me and said, "You've built one of the most solid cases I've ever seen. He doesn't stand a chance." That gave me a strength I hadn't felt in years. She explained the strategy. First, we would file for a contested divorce, citing infidelity and parental neglect. We would attach all the evidence. Then, we would request sole custody with supervised visitation until he proved a genuine interest in the children. As for child support, she said that with his salary and his history of absence, We could ask for an amount that covered not just basic needs, but also the psychological treatment the children would inevitably need. We also filed for a division of assets, including the apartment, which, although in his name, was acquired during our marriage, meaning I was entitled to 50%. Her strategy was not to warn him at all. We would simply have him served at work, in front of his colleagues, including in front of Jessica. It would be the ultimate public humiliation. I confess, the thought of it gave me an anticipatory pleasure that was perhaps not very Christian, but was all too human. We planned everything for a Tuesday, a day I knew he had a monthly meeting with the entire board of directors. The process server would arrive at 10 in the morning. The day before, I acted completely normal. I made him breakfast, asked about his day. He was excited, talking about the promotion, saying he might have good news soon. I just smiled and said I was rooting for him. He had no idea what was about to happen. On Tuesday morning, I woke up with an incredible mental clarity. I got the kids ready for school, made them breakfast, and dropped them off at the gate as always. Then I went back home and waited. At 10:15, my phone rang. It was Dr. Evans. "He's been served," she said. And according to the server, he turned white as a sheet when he opened the envelope. He tried to say he needed to read it calmly, but the server explained he had to sign for receipt right then and there. It's legal procedure. He signed, and apparently he ran out of the meeting. 15 minutes later, my phone blew up. 32 missed calls from him, 17 text messages. The first one said, "What is this?" The following ones grew increasingly desperate. "Have you gone crazy? This is a misunderstanding. We need to talk. Don't do this to our family. Think of the children." I didn't answer a single one. Dr. Evans had instructed me to have no direct contact with him. All communication would be through our lawyers. But then he showed up at the house. It was noon. I was making lunch when I heard the key in the door. He stormed in, the crumpled legal papers in his hand, and started yelling, asking what this madness was. I remained calm. I turned off the stove, turned to face him, and said in a voice I didn't recognize, "It's not madness, Richard. It's a consequence. Did you think I didn't know about Jessica? Did you think I didn't have proof of every lie you've told? Of every time you chose anything and everything over your own children?" He was speechless. His face went through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds: denial, anger, fear, desperation. I realized in that moment that he finally understood that he was no longer dealing with the same woman who accepted everything in silence. He tried to get closer, to touch my arm with that manipulative way of his, saying we could solve this at home, that we didn't need to involve lawyers, that he would change. I took a step back and said, "You had 8 years to change. 8 years where I begged for scraps of attention for myself and for your children. It's over. You can leave my house." He was indignant. "My house? This is my house too. I paid for everything here." And I replied, "Then you'll get your half when we sell it in the settlement. But in the meantime, this is where your children live, and you don't live here anymore. I had the locks changed this morning. Your things are in 3 boxes in the garage. You can take them now." Seeing the look on his face, the shock, the rage, the desperation, I won't lie, it gave me a profound satisfaction. He tried to argue, to threaten me, saying he would fight for custody, that he would prove I was crazy, that I was alienating the children. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Go on, repeat that," I said. "It'll be great to show the judge you threatening the mother of your children." He saw the trap and backed down. He grabbed his boxes and slammed the door on his way out. In the following days, the real legal war began. His lawyer, a well-paid guy named Mr. Matthews from his company's firm, filed a response claiming I was lying about everything, that he was a present father, that his absence was because he worked hard to provide for his family, that I was using the children as a weapon over a work colleague. Dr. Evans had expected exactly this. We scheduled a mediation hearing, though we already knew there would be no agreement. On the day of the hearing, I arrived with a flash drive containing all the evidence, organized into folders. I had even created a 140-page document myself, with a timeline, screenshots, photos, all dated and verifiable. When Mr. Matthews started his speech about how Richard was a wronged man who worked hard and had always loved his children, Dr. Evans simply plugged the flash drive into the courtroom computer and started presenting. She showed the screenshots of his conversations with Jessica. She showed the location history from his phone, proving he had lied about his whereabouts. She showed the hotel receipts, the gifts bought for his mistress. She showed the document from the school attesting that in 3 years he hadn't attended a single parent-teacher conference. She showed the document from the pediatrician. She showed photos of the children's birthdays where he was absent. I had even managed to get some videos from school performances where you could see Sophia searching the audience for her father, and he wasn't there. When she finished, the silence in the room was absolute. Even Mr. Matthews was speechless. Richard was pale, sweating, his head down. The judge looked at him and asked if he had anything to say. He tried to stammer out some excuses, but the judge raised his hand and said he had seen enough. He said he would schedule a hearing for witness testimony, but that it was clear there was severe paternal neglect. In that moment, I saw something break inside Richard. It wasn't remorse for what he had done to his children. It was fury at having been exposed, at having lost control, at having been cornered. We left the courthouse, and Dr. Evans told me she was 99% certain I would get everything I asked for. But I still had one more card up my sleeve that I hadn't shown anyone, not even her. Through the mother of one of Sophia's friends, I had gotten in touch with 3 other wives of Richard's colleagues, and they all had similar stories. He had a reputation at work for being a womanizer, for hitting on female employees. One of them even said he had tried something with her at a company party years ago when she was still married to one of his colleagues. I had gathered their informal testimonies. They were all willing to testify if needed. I held on to it in case he tried to reverse anything. But I didn't need it. 3 weeks later, the temporary ruling came. Provisional sole custody for me, child support set at 40% of his net salary, plus health insurance and private school tuition. Visitation on alternating weekends, but only in the presence of a third-party supervisor until he completes a parenting course. I read that ruling 3 times to believe it. I had done it. I had actually managed to protect my children and secure their future. The final hearing took place 2 months later, and it was the day everything finally came to a definitive end. Richard had lost the promotion because of the scandal at work. Jessica had been transferred to another branch of the company in a different state. Apparently, HR decided their relationship was creating a toxic environment. And his family, the mother-in-law and sister-in-law who had always defended him, were finally starting to see the truth. The week before the hearing, Marcia called me. It was the first time in 8 years she had ever called me directly. She was crying. She said she had gone to visit Richard in the tiny apartment he'd rented after leaving the house and had found him completely lost, not even knowing how to use the washing machine. She said she had talked to him, and for the first time, he admitted he had been absent, that he had cheated, that he had left everything to me. She apologized, saying she had raised her son thinking men didn't need to do anything at home, that they only needed to work, and now she was seeing the result of that. She asked me not to stop her from seeing her grandchildren. I assured her I never would, that the problem was never with her, but with her son's lies and absence. I hung up the phone and cried, not from sadness, but from relief, from validation. Even his own mother had acknowledged I was right. On the day of the final hearing, I arrived early with Dr. Evans. We were fully prepared. She had even managed to get a surprise witness I wasn't expecting, the children's school principal. She had asked to testify voluntarily after hearing about the case. When Richard arrived with Mr. Matthews, he looked different, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes. I realized he was feeling the weight of it all. The courtroom was called to order, and we went in. The judge was a man named Judge Harrison, known for being strict but fair, especially in cases involving children. He began by calling Richard's witnesses first. Richard had brought 2 work colleagues to testify that he was a good father and a dedicated professional. The first one said Richard always mentioned his children, showed pictures, that it was obvious he loved them. Dr. Evans, on cross-examination, simply asked, "And in how many of these beloved children's school events have you seen him attend?" The witness was stumped. "I wouldn't know how to answer that," he said. Next question. "Have you ever been to his house when the children were there?" "Yes, once." "And what was his interaction with them like?" The witness hesitated, then said it was normal. Dr. Evans pressed, "What exactly did you see him do with the children?" The witness admitted that Richard had actually asked his ex-wife, me, to take the children to another room because they were watching a football game. And just like that, the witness was dismantled. The second witness was even weaker, a personal friend who was clearly just there to fill a seat. When it was time for our witnesses, the tone shifted completely. First, the children's pediatrician testified. She brought the complete medical history, showing that in 5 years of appointments, the father had attended only once. And that one time was because I was hospitalized with pneumonia and couldn't take Sophia myself. She also mentioned that in several consultations, I had reported growing anxiety in the children related to their father's absence, that Michael had developed an excessive attachment to me because he was afraid I would disappear too. It hurt to hear it all over again. Next came the school principal, Mrs. Davis. She had been Sophia's teacher for 2 years and knew our situation well. She described how Sophia would always wait by the window for her father on performance days, how she always asked if her daddy was coming this time, and how slowly she had stopped asking because she already knew the answer. She told the court about the day of the recital, that she saw Richard arrive with another woman, saw the confusion on Sophia's face, and that after that day, the little girl became more withdrawn, less participative, and started having trouble concentrating. Mrs. Davis looked directly at Richard and said something that echoed through the entire room. "I've worked with children for 23 years. I've seen every kind of family composition, but I have never seen a father so present on a paycheck and so absent in his children's lives." Richard lowered his head. Mr. Matthews tried to object, claiming it was a personal opinion, but the judge said it was the impression of a qualified professional who worked with the child, and that would be considered. Then it was my turn to testify. Dr. Evans asked me questions we had rehearsed. I told them about the nights alone in the hospital, the missed birthdays, the broken promises. But what really made an impact was when she asked me how the children reacted to their father's absence. I started telling them about the time Michael asked if his daddy didn't love him. My voice broke. I started to cry. It wasn't an act. It was real. It was everything I had held in for years finally coming out. The judge gave me a moment, offered me some water. I took a deep breath and continued. I told them that for years I had made up excuses, created justifications to protect their father's image, but that I reached a point where I realized I was harming my children by normalizing neglect. Mr. Matthews tried to destabilize me during his cross-examination, asking if I wasn't using the children as a weapon out of jealousy, if I wasn't exaggerating normal situations for a man who works hard. I looked straight at him and replied, "I have 2 jobs. I'm a teacher in the morning and I tutor 3 afternoons a week. Yet I have never missed a school meeting, never missed a doctor's appointment, never failed to be present for the important moments. So, no, it's not about working hard. It's about priorities. And his children were never his priority. He then asked about the infidelity, insinuating that maybe I hadn't been a good wife, that perhaps that's why he sought attention elsewhere. Dr. Evans immediately stood up and objected, stating it was victim blaming and completely irrelevant to the matter of custody. The judge agreed and admonished Mr. Matthews. Then came the moment I had been both waiting for and dreading. Richard was called to testify. He sat in the witness chair and swore to tell the truth. His lawyer asked him easy questions, trying to paint a picture of a repentant father who wanted to change. Richard had rehearsed well. He said he recognized he had made mistakes, that he worked too much and missed important moments, that he regretted it, that he wanted a chance to be present in his children's lives. It was almost convincing. But then it was Dr. Evans's turn. She started calmly. "How long were you having the affair with Jessica?" He tried to deny it at first, then admitted it had been a relationship that lasted a few months. She showed the screenshots. "A year, Richard, not a few months." He was speechless. She continued. "Did you take your mistress to your daughter's recital?" He tried to explain it was a coincidence, that they were coming from a work commitment. She asked, "So you consider your 7-year-old daughter's school recital an appropriate place to take your mistress?" He didn't answer. She went deeper. "When was the last time you asked your children how their day at school was?" Silence. "When was the last time you put them to bed?" Silence. "Do you know the name of Sophia's current teacher? Michael's best friend? Their favorite colors?" Silence to everything. And then she asked the final question, the one that destroyed any chance he had. "Mr. Miller, you are here asking for joint custody of your children. Can you please tell me when each of their birthdays are?" He froze. He tried to think, started to say a date, and stopped. It was wrong, and he knew it. He tried another, also wrong. The room fell into absolute silence. A father who didn't know his own children's birthdays. The judge dismissed him from the witness stand with a look of profound disappointment on his face. During the closing arguments, Dr. Evans was surgical. She presented all the facts, all the evidence, all the witnesses. She requested not only definitive sole custody, but also that the visitation schedule remain supervised until the father completed a responsible parenting course and provided proof of psychological counseling. Mr. Matthews tried to argue that this was excessive, that it would impede the paternal bond. But the judge cut him off and said that the paternal bond had already been broken for years by the father's own choice, and that it was now up to Richard to prove he truly wanted to rebuild that bond. The final judgment came 3 weeks later. Definitive sole custody for me, child support at 45% of his net salary, plus benefits, bi-weekly supervised visitations, a favorable division of assets, including 70% of the value of the apartment, considering I had cared for the children alone for years while he invested in an extramarital affair. And on top of that, a $50,000 settlement for moral damages for the years of emotional neglect and for exposing the children to humiliating situations. When I read that judgment for the first time, sitting in the living room of the house that was now just mine and my children's, I cried. I cried for everything I hadn't cried for years. I cried with relief, with a sense of justice, and for a new beginning. 2 years have passed since that ruling, and when I look back today, I barely recognize the woman I used to be. Life has changed completely, not just for me, but especially for the children. The first few months after the divorce were a period of adjustment. Sophia was 9 and Michael was 7, and they needed to process everything that had happened. I put them both in therapy with a wonderful child psychologist named Dr. Bennett. She worked with them on the issues of abandonment and the guilt that children in these situations always feel, even though they have no reason to. And slowly, I saw my children start to truly smile again. Sophia, who had become withdrawn at school, started participating again. She joined the choir, made new friends, and stopped looking at the door, waiting for someone who never came. Michael, who had developed that anxious attachment to me, began to feel more secure. He realized I wasn't going to leave, that he could trust I would always be there. With the child support and the settlement money, I was finally able to provide a financial stability we never had. I took them out of the expensive private school Richard had insisted on to impress others and put them in a smaller, more welcoming school where they actually mattered and weren't just a number. I used part of the money to renovate the house, the apartment that was now truly ours. We painted the bedrooms the colors they chose. Sophia wanted light pink with stars on the ceiling, and Michael wanted blue with shelves for his toy cars. For the first time, they had a space that was really theirs, made with love and attention. I was also able to reduce my workload. I quit tutoring and used the settlement money to get a master's degree in educational psychology. I found a better job at a private school as an academic coordinator, with a better salary and hours that allowed me to pick up my children from school every day, have dinner together, and help with their homework, simple things that were once a luxury. As for Richard, he completed the parenting course as the judge ordered, went through 6 months of therapy, and gradually began to have unsupervised visits. At first, the children were hesitant, especially Sophia. She was afraid of being alone with him, afraid he would disappear again or bring another stranger around. But with time and a lot of work on his part, yes, his, because for the first time in his life he actually made an effort, things improved. He learned how to be a father, not in the way I had hoped for when I married him, dreaming of a perfect family, but in the way that's possible for someone rebuilding a relationship from scratch. Today, he picks up the kids every other weekend. He actually picks them up. He's not late, he doesn't make excuses. He takes them to the park, the movies, museums, simple things that signify presence. Sophia told me he apologized to her, that he cried while talking about everything he lost by being selfish and immature. She has the maturity of a child who has been through a lot. She told him she was trying to forgive him, but that it would take time. And I thought it was beautiful that she knew how to set boundaries like that. Michael is still more reserved with his father, still testing to see if he will really show up, still asking me 3 times before the day if Daddy confirmed he's coming. But little by little, he is learning to trust again. Jessica is completely out of his life, or at least that's what he says, and I have no reason to doubt him or to care anymore. He lives alone in a small apartment. He lost several friends when everything came out. His family, who once blindly defended him, now demands his presence and responsibility. Marcia visits her grandchildren every week. She and I have developed a relationship of respect. She brings cakes, helps with homework, and always thanks me for not preventing her from seeing the children, even when I had every reason to be angry with their whole family. Patricia, his sister, has distanced herself. I think she was ashamed to look at me after all the cruel comments she made over the years, and honestly, I don't miss her. As for me, I am rediscovering myself as a person. I spent so long being just a mother and a frustrated wife that I had forgotten who I was. I started doing things I loved again. I joined a book club. I started going for walks in the park on Saturday mornings when the kids are with their dad. I made new friends, incredible women who support me. I also opened my heart to the possibility of a new relationship. I'm not actively looking, but I'm open. I met a man at the school, the children's gym teacher, Mark. We started talking during staff meetings, and he's asked me out for coffee a few times. It's all very light, very easy, no pressure. Sophia already asked if I like him, and I told her I was getting to know him, that maybe I did. She said it would be nice if I were happy too, that I deserved it. Coming from an 11-year-old, that carried enormous weight. It meant she saw that I had sacrificed, that I had put their happiness before my own. And now she wanted to return the favor by rooting for mine. The most important thing of all is that today I sleep in peace. I no longer have that ache in my chest, that constant fear that the children will ask about their father and I won't know what to say. I no longer have to make up excuses, no longer have to protect the image of someone who didn't deserve it. My children know the truth, in a way that's appropriate for their age. They know that sometimes adults make mistakes, that their father made a lot of them, but that he is trying to be better, and that regardless, they are completely loved by me and by the family we have built. I look around our home now, see their drawings on the fridge, their backpacks thrown by the door, their sneakers caked with mud from the park, and I feel gratitude. Gratitude that I had the courage to leave, to fight, to not accept scraps. If I had stayed in that dead marriage out of fear or convenience, my children would be growing up thinking that was normal, that love was absence, that family was everyone in their own separate corner. Today, they know that family is presence, it's attention, it's choosing to be together, even when it's hard. I learned that sometimes the greatest act of love isn't keeping a family together at all costs, but having the courage to tear down what is broken, to build something new and healthy. Richard lost precious years with his children. He lost the first words, the first steps, the first school performances, the nighttime fears, the silly laughs. He lost all of that, and he will never get it back. The money he worked so hard to accumulate couldn't buy back a single one of those moments. And I think he has finally understood that. Too late for what could have been, but still in time to build something moving forward. As for me, I won back my dignity. I won peace. I won the certainty that I did the right thing even when it was the hardest. And I won the respect of my children, who now see me not as a victim, but as a strong woman who fought for her family. There are still nights when I cry, remembering everything I went through, the loneliness, the fear, the exhaustion. But they are different tears now. They are the tears of a survivor, of a winner, of someone who looks back on the path she traveled with pride. If I could go back in time and speak to that woman sitting in the school auditorium with a broken heart and a confused daughter in her lap, I would tell her to be brave, that in the end, it would all be worth it, that the storm would pass and the sun would shine again. And it did. Today, the three of us are happy, in a way I never imagined was possible. And this happiness is something no one can ever take from us. And now I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think about this story. Have you been through something similar? Did you also have to raise your children almost entirely on your own while their father was physically present but emotionally absent? Or do you know someone who is living this situation right now? Tell me in the comments. Your story could help someone else who is feeling alone, who thinks she's asking for too much, who is doubting whether she truly deserves more. Leave your story below. Let's create a support network, because the more we talk about this, the more we share our experiences, the stronger we become, and the more women find the courage to change their situations. And let me ask you this too. Do you think I did the right thing in fighting for sole custody? Or do you think I should have accepted joint custody from the beginning? I really want to know your honest opinion on this. Some people criticized me, saying I was being vengeful, that I was using the children. But I always knew in my heart that I was protecting my children. What would you have done in my place? Comment below. Let's talk about it. Now, if you identified with this story, if you or someone you love is going through a difficult relationship, dealing with emotional absence and a lack of support, I want to encourage you to seek help. And the most important help you can seek is spiritual help. Put your faith in God. Give your pain to Jesus Christ. I know it might sound cliche. I know some people will say that religion doesn't solve practical problems. But let me tell you something. In the most difficult moments of my journey, when I was alone in the hospital with a sick child in the middle of the night, when I cried in secret in the bathroom so my children wouldn't see, when I thought I wouldn't have the strength to go on, It was my faith that sustained me. It was knowing that God was with me, that I wasn't truly alone, that there was a greater purpose in all that suffering. So I encourage you, if you don't have a church, look for a Christian faith community near you, a place where you can be welcomed, where you can pray, where you can find other people who understand your struggles. Faith won't magically solve your problems overnight, but it will give you the strength to face them. It will give you the wisdom to make the right decisions. It will give you peace in the midst of the storm. Jesus said that in this world we would have trouble, but to take heart, for he has overcome the world. And it's this victory that I experienced in my life. It wasn't easy, it wasn't fast, but it was real. So don't face this alone. Yes, seek professional help, a therapist, a lawyer when necessary, a support network of friends and family, but also seek spiritual help. Let God guide your steps. Trust that He has a better plan for your life than anything you can imagine. I want to thank from the bottom of my heart each and every one of you who watched until the end, who dedicated this time to listen to my story. I know it was a long video, but I hope it was worth it. I hope that in some way this story has touched you, inspired you, given you hope, or at least made you feel less alone. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next videos. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. And don't forget to comment below. I read all the comments and I reply whenever I can, and your participation makes all the difference in helping the channel grow and reach more people. Thank you so much for being here with me on this journey. May God bless each and every one of you. May He give you the strength to face your challenges, the wisdom to make your decisions, and the peace to move forward. Sending so much love to each of you. See you in the next video.